Metal Gear was one of the first stealth games to hit the mainstream. It was a success in Japan, and even its NES port that took away most of what made the MSX2 original special, it fared just as well commercially. Hideo Kojima convinced Konami that he belonged there, and was ready to move on to the next IP that would eventually become adventure cult classic Snatcher. But Konami saw dollar in the Metal Gear name and wanted a sequel. Metal Gear Snake's Revenge was released for the NES in 1990 to Western audiences and drifted even further away from Kojima's work. It was basically an action shooter with a soundtrack you'd expect from a Konami NES game. Kojima had nothing to do with this one and is considered a random non-canon spin-off like Metal Gear Acid, for example. But the creator of Snake's Revenge happened to be on a train with Kojima and encouraged him to make a true Metal Gear sequel. A few months later, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake was released for the MSX2 on July 1990. A few years after the events of Metal Gear, and completely ignoring Snake's Revenge, the Cold War is drawing to a close, but another problem was becoming apparent. World oil levels were critically low, leading to widespread panic. But Dr. Kyo Marv has created a solution with Oilix, a more efficient energy with little resources, effort and time needed to create. He was about to demonstrate how Oilix was produced to the entire world, but is kidnapped by Xanaspar soldiers so they can hold the whole world hostage for oil and nukes. This forces Foxhound Commander Roy Campbell to bring Solid Snake out of retirement, enter the Xanaspar base and rescue Dr. Marv. Snake finds out that another Metal Gear is in the base and is ready to be put into mass production. Though complicated at first, this is an 8-bit game with themes of energy crises and nuclear warfare. Like the predecessor, this is all you need to understand how far ahead Kojima was when it came to storytelling in video games. He even added in-game cutscenes trying to be as cinematic as possible, with an MSX2 computer. Though it doesn't help that text can accidentally be skipped with the D-pad, just be careful. The Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence re-release has a few minor changes from the MSX2 original. The most obvious is the correctly translated text, but there's another difficulty option. Cigarettes slowly drain your health, some of the character names are changed, and Solid Snake, who previously looked like Mel Gibson, looks like the Snake we're all familiar with. Just looking at this game, just looking at the intro, or compare it to the predecessor, you can tell Kojima pushed the MSX2 to its limits back in 1990. Now even though the Japanese computer was limited to just a few sprites, there's so much going on screen. The strong colours, the map system is fuzzy, Snake can catch a cold, some parts of the floor make sounds that cause the soldiers to be suspicious, and you can use the walls to lure them into a sneak attack. I really like the music as well, like a science fiction action, and it fits perfectly. Everything looks and feels so polished, though at first I couldn't understand why there were so many kids walking around the base. It looks out of place, until you realise they were saved from past conflicts and are expected to be trained into soldiers in the future. Makes sense? This reminds me a lot of Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel on the Game Boy, with the way the HUD is set up, the camera view and the stealth mechanics. It's basically a home console version. Solid Snake enters the base from outside, begins with a pack of cigarettes, his lucky charm, and finds unique items, weapons and keycard numbers inside the base. This isn't about shooting everything blocking your path, okay in some ways it is, but Campbell encourages you to make as little human contact as possible with a couple of exceptions. As I mentioned before, you have a map system that indicates where you and each enemy are close by. In Metal Gear, enemies respawn whenever you leave the screen. Now you can pinpoint where they are using the new map system. If you get caught, instead of eliminating everyone on screen, the map is jammed and you need to briefly stay out of sight until the guards say so. Fun fact, the exclamation and question marks were introduced here. Almost every element of the gameplay has been improved in some way. Snake has learned to crawl under things so he can either hide or protect himself from gunfire. And there's an oxygen bar so if you're underwater or in a gassed area, for a brief moment it doesn't affect your health. The bullet hit detection is still pretty poor. You're basically a huge square target and guaranteed to take damage first. And sometimes it's the other way around for enemies. Like the predecessor, it feels like a Metroidvania. You're in a huge maze of a base sneaking past soldiers with plenty of doors that can't be accessed until the correct keycard is found. You need to search everywhere and refresh through previous spots to find new weapons and items that can be used to progress even further. And pathways to get from one building to another can be unlocked. It may be repetitive for some, but I love Metroidvania style games. A boss battle literally comes out of nowhere, and it'll take more than one go to beat most of them. Defeating one will increase your maximum health and ammo supply. If you save the game, it would only save the last time you were either on a new floor or area. Keep that in mind, because if you get the game over screen, any progress you made on that floor, you're doing it all over again. There was one moment where I beat Night Fright, saved it, then immediately died because of lack of information. Then I had to deal with Night Fright again. Why couldn't it just save right where you left off? At the very least, it should auto-save whenever you beat a boss. Speaking of lack of information, it's still a highly cryptic game. It expects you to have a long-term memory, which is easier said than done. Even if you're a fan of the Metal Gear series, you'll be left in limbo at least once. After beating the first boss, the Black Ninja, I literally searched everywhere I can possibly go, and no luck. After using a walkthrough, I found out that this soldier walks into the jungle if you follow him, and the only way I can distinguish between him and a generic soldier is the color of his hat. I used a codec around this spot just to know whether I was using it enough or not, but nobody gave me anything. So how was I supposed to know to follow the soldier into the jungle? Oh, and remember the Night Fright boss? Once I beat it and found out how to get past what turned out to be sulfuric acid that caused me to fight the same boss twice, I realized the door to progress further is locked. After using a walkthrough again because I was stuck, the keycard to the locked door was in the tall grass from a previous boss. After getting keycard 9 and came back to this room, all of a sudden, I get a call saying that card 9 is in the tall grass. Thanks for the info, but you're a bit late. Why would you tell me after I got the keycard? How did gamers survive in the early 90s? I will concede, I am in a bit of a rush because I have other video games to review. All the information is in front of you, and there are a few exceptions where the puzzles are so cleverly designed it genuinely amazes you. But overall, the information is too brief and it can slip from your mind very easily. You'll need a lot of time and patience to comprehend everything. I have been overly critical. I mean, the only thing I truly don't like is how overly confusing it can get, and even then, it's not as bad as the predecessor, and it can be considered a plus point for most gamers. This may be another one of Hideo Kojima's hypnotic tricks, but the grim environment and solid stealth mechanics more than make up for it. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake is without a doubt a huge improvement over Metal Gear in every element. It has a larger map with more weapons, puzzles, characters, and a story that doesn't hold back. In fact, this is one of the best 8-bit games to not be released on the NES, and is worth checking out if you're a fan of the stealth genre or the Metal Gear series in general. I really like this game. But because it was released for the MSX2 computer only in Japan, in addition to being late in its life cycle, almost nobody played it. I find it baffling that Konami released Snake's Revenge on the NES, but not this. Did they ever consider releasing it on the Super Nintendo? Today, things have changed. You can easily get this game through Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, the HD collection, and the Wii Virtual Console. Hideo Kojima, figuring it was better to move on again, he would go on to direct Police Noughts, and released in 1993 to critical and commercial success. But the Metal Gear series would return once more after Konami put its working powers on the upcoming Sony PlayStation. We all know how that turned out, but it's a story for another future review.